The Monaco Grand Prix brought clarity rather than drama. As the dust settles, the stage is set for one of the most important moments of the 2025 Formula One season, and the suspense is building. Every improvement, blunder, and driver interaction will be amplified in the upcoming races. McLaren, the dominant force in recent months, may be facing problems. Ferrari's future is twisted between hope and internal pressure. And for Red Bull, the Spanish Grand Prix may be the start of a comeback, or another slide behind the leaders. The Monaco Grand Prix brings the first technical section of the season to a close. Lando Norris resisted the strain this time, with Red Bull in the distance and an unrecognizable Mercedes in the background. The lives of the two McLarens should have been easier, but if Max Verstappen is not there, Ferrari arrives with Charles Leclerc. The wait was more interesting than the race. No one had anticipated how the requirement to do at least 3 stints would affect it. The reality, however, was quite different. Lesser teams' logical need for points tainted the competition. Almost never was it possible to test and adapt at the limit. Drivers could go 4 seconds slower without risking being overtaken. Of fact, the mandatory pit was a respectable attempt, but it did not reveal the strategies for a race actually on the limit. Everyone was expecting for it, but the absence of the safety car is an oddity that demonstrates this. After the horrendous overall performance of Mercedes, even Toto Wolff admitted, "We have to think about something else for 2026. Vasseur also more or less joined in declaring, "The 2 stops did not change the race at all. This only opened the window for Max to wait for a red flag. I did not see behind us what was happening, but I understood more or less what happened." You can imagine that a situation like that would have happened with 2 cars of the same team close together. We also tried to manage the pace and the gap to the people behind last year. Almost everything is also dependent on the size of the cars. The next ones will be slightly smaller, which is possibly the one certainty about future single-seaters. Everyone is waiting for the new front wings to be mounted on the track, but no one knows what effect they will have. In other ways, the correlation will need to be rearranged because no one can recreate the effects in the tunnel at speeds more than 180 km per hour. The engineers anticipate a productive Friday in terms of adaptation and data collection. We should look at FlowViz strips. The front wings will be 3 times less flexible than before, returning us to an aerodynamic environment from the beginning of the 2022 regulations, when no one could play with the relevance of elasticity on these cars. Obviously, the cars will have more downforce in the corners as the concepts grow, but they will also return more rigid at medium speed, so we'll see whether and when porpoising will be activated. In that situation, some people will have to lift the car off the ground more than others, which would be the true game changer. Engineers and drivers do not want cars to lose balance in corners due to oversteer or to slide into understeer when slowing down. The treatment was flexible wings to preserve balance, and the research was extensive. Red Bull was also a master of this, but McLaren outperformed them. Following Australia's direction, the FIA has gradually ceased operations. Even in terms of drag, a lot can alter if the gaps remain narrow. Barcelona will already sound like an indicator of who is rising and who is falling. Will anyone experience any issues? In general, the upcoming races leading up to Spa will determine whether the new or old performance levels will apply. Red Bull will determine whether its primary update is a downgrade of McLaren. The Ferrari SF24's rear wing was seen at Barcelona, and the SF25 will have revised specifications. Ferrari wants to monitor progress, but values may change. Vasseur anticipates the SF25 will have a new front wing. However, in addition to the more efficient all-purpose V-shape, a new rear wing with a flat primary plane for higher downforce would be introduced. McLaren has complete control of the constructors. After a disastrous start in Monaco, Ferrari was able to confirm one characteristic of the old car in terms of drivability and has reclaimed Red Bull's slipstream in the standings. Verstappen will find out in Spain whether his big upgrade is a downgrade from McLaren. Bridging mechanical issues and driver angst the debate shifts to another frequency, the Ferrari pit wall. While engineers work on downforce and flexi-wing directions, Lewis Hamilton and his new red team are realizing that the obstacles of integration extend far beyond pace. Lewis Hamilton claimed that radio communication wasn't that clear, following another race in which tensions flared between the Ferrari driver and mechanic Riccardo Adami. The 2025 Monaco Grand Prix was yet another race that left Ferrari in firefighting gear following, owing to apparent conflicts in radio traffic between Lewis Hamilton and his mechanic. Hamilton finished fifth, with teammate Charles Leclerc second, giving Ferrari its best combined points score from a non-sprint weekend this season. Nonetheless, neither driver was in a joyful mood. Hamilton was obviously sorrow and reserved following the race. Leclerc may have hoped for better after challenging for pole on Saturday, and Hamilton definitely did, as he lost 3 grid spots owing to a penalty for impeding Max Verstappen at Massagnet in Q1. The incident, prompted by the team misinforming him about Verstappen's approach, kicked off a chain of events that resulted in him being stuck in no man's land throughout the race. Furthermore, it highlighted further peevish-sounding radio conversations between Hamilton and race engineer Riccardo Adami. Later, Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur attempted to deny any notion of conflict between the two. Because when the driver is asking something between turn 1 and turn 3, we have to wait until he reaches the tunnel to reply, to avoid speaking with him during the corners, said Vasseur. It's not that we are sleeping, it's not that we are having a beer on the pit wall, it's just because we have a section of the track where we agreed before to speak with him. And honestly, it's not a tension that the guy is asking something. He's between the walls, he's under pressure, he's fighting, he's at 300 kilometers per hour between the walls. I'm perfectly fine, and I spoke with him, Hamilton, after the race. He was not upset at all. While this all sounds logical enough, drivers frequently dislike being asked questions or given information while their mental capacity is taken by a difficult set of corners. It is also extremely generic. And the most bizarre exchange occurred after the race, not during it. It's a P5, Adami stated over the radio during the cool-down lap. Lost a lot of time in traffic. The rest we need to investigate. And pick up spent tire rubber, please. Yeah, big thank you to the boys, as I said, for fixing the car after Saturday's practice crash, replied Hamilton. It's not been the easiest of weekends, but we live to fight another day. So, yeah. Hamilton broke the radio quiet by asking, "Are you upset with me or something?" He heard no response. Such discussions must be considered in context, especially when presented on television, as F1 has recently been known to present team radio in a misleading manner in order to intensify the drama. However, this is thought to be the exact how the conversation unfolded. It also came after an interaction late in the race, in which Hamilton inquired if the trio in front of him on the track, Verstappen, Lando Norris, Leclerc, and Oscar Piastri, were still nearly a minute ahead. Adami's reply, Charles on medium, tyres, and McLaren's on hard, in turn 16, very close to each other fighting, was deemed unsatisfactory. "You're not answering the question," replied Hamilton. "It doesn't really matter, I guess. I was asking if I'm a minute behind or, he's 48 seconds ahead," eventually came the reply. The tenor of neither interaction can be explained in terms of Hamilton's location on the track, and if he was not upset at all when he spoke with Vasseur after the race, he had improved much between the media pen and the team principal's office. Hamilton crossed the finish line 51.387 seconds behind race winner Norris and 48.256 seconds behind teammate Leclerc. This will have irritated Hamilton, as will having spent the race in the aforementioned no man's land, due to the crew incorrectly notifying him that Verstappen was slowing down on that Q1 lap. The grid penalty put him behind Isaac Hadjar's Racing Bulls and Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin for the opening stint, until they pitted at the end of laps 14 and 16, respectively. Hamilton was able to overtake them both after 2 laps of open air before his own stop, but he had already leaked 12 seconds to his teammate since the lead group, led by Norris, was using less tyre management than Hajar was to try to build a gap. Leclerc's initial stop on lap 23 cost him more lap time than Hamilton's, but the distance continued to build. Between laps 33 and 39, he was losing 1 to 3 seconds every lap behind Leclerc. The data also shows that his in and out laps around his pit stop at the conclusion of lap 56 were considerably more costly. Some of these losses can be attributed to traffic. The Racing Bulls and Williams tactics of having one driver bunch the field so their teammate could pit for free meant that the distance between Alex Albon in 11th on lap 57 and Nico Hülkenberg in 18th was only 11 seconds. The cars had moved over sensibly enough, for the most part, as the leading group of 4 approached to lap them, but then continued their agitated dance and were slower to part ways with Hamilton. However, Hamilton's SF25 was still slower than Leclerc's, accounting for a significant portion of the 48's disadvantage. He attributes it to his lack of experience with Ferrari's built-in performance characteristics, but 0.3 of a second here and there adds up to a significant loss over the course of a race. As Hamilton himself said after qualifying, "This weekend, it's been a bit of a steep learning curve." The bigger question now is whether this is a curve that Ferrari and Hamilton will ride together, or a warning of growing pains that the team cannot afford to overlook. The upcoming races will put the modifications and regulations to the test, as well as Ferrari's internal cohesion and McLaren's flexibility under duress. A technological storm is developing, and Barcelona might be the lightning strike that reveals who is prepared to withstand it.